Hey everybody! So today we're going to talk some more about Pluto in transit, specifically about Pluto conjunct natal planets. At some point I'll do a video about transit Pluto squaring planets or opposing or trine or sextile, but I do think that the conjunctions are the most important. That's in a natal chart, in transits, in synastry, whatever. I do think that the conjunctions are the most important, since it's a literal blending of transit Pluto's energy with that natal planet, making the transformation that happens. It merges, like it's going to happen. So I do think it is the most important. Again, opinions are like assholes. You might feel very different about this. But one thing I forgot to mention in the last video where I talked about the sun through Mars, transit Pluto conjunct the sun through Mars. I mentioned, I mentioned transformation. I mentioned power. I mentioned death and rebirth. These kinds of Plutonian themes, things coming out, letting things go. Usually when you let things go, things have to come to light and come out. Not always easy, but this does usually happen. Another thing I forgot to mention is like obsessions. Transit Pluto because Pluto can be obsessive and compulsive or compulsive. You might find that like during, I don't know, let's say during transit Pluto conjunct natal Mercury, you might find that, you become more mentally obsessive about things or compulsive. Things regarding your mind, how you think, what you think about, what you want to learn, what you want to share, all of these, there might be an obsessive and or compulsiveness to this. I might say, let's say transit Pluto is conjunct natal Mars. There might be some obsessions with drive, or even with impulse, or even compulsions, like feeling like you just need to act on any impulse that you have. It's like a compulsive need. You have to do it. It can also, transit Pluto can also play out like that too. It can definitely amplify the obsessive compulsive and or compulsive feeling, and give that natal planet like a jump in that direction. So I did want to mention that briefly. So we're going to do Jupiter through Neptune, transit Pluto conjunct Jupiter through Neptune. And we'll also talk about transit Pluto conjunct Chiron. But, okay. So let's say you've got transit Pluto and it's conjunct natal Jupiter. This might be a time where there's like a transforming of your beliefs. Jupiter is about beliefs and about truth. There could be, transformation in what you believe. There could be even an obsessiveness about finding truth in some, whatever that is would depend on, where Jupiter falls in the chart and what house cusps. If you use traditional and modern rulership, I do, then you'd want to look at the house cusps that Sagittarius and Pisces fall on, since Jupiter is the traditional ruler of Pisces and obviously the ruler of Sagittarius. Whatever house cusps those signs fall will give you also an idea as to what areas of life will be impacted by this. There could also be a lot of power in wisdom during transit Pluto conjunct natal Jupiter. The person might feel that their wisdom, what they know, is more powerful. Their understanding might feel more powerful. It can also go in the opposite direction, and they might not feel like they understand shit. It just depends. It really depends on everything going on in the chart. But something's kind of changing in that regard. Yeah, and feeling like Jupiter expands. That could be transforming too at this time. Again, depending on everything going on in the chart, this might make it easier or more difficult to expand. Just want to take everything into consideration here. Okay, so let's say you had transit Pluto conjunct natal Saturn. Now this is like when the two big dick daddies come and fuck each other. Yeah, it's you know, I've experienced this one. This one is challenging because you've got two very powerful planets coming together, merging together, and Pluto is going to transform the way that natal Saturn finds mastery, or what mastery is to that person will probably transform. There could even be some obsessions with it, with obsessions dealing with that notion of mastery or even authority. This could be personal authority or other people's authority, or how the person relates to notions or thoughts of authority in general could change. Could certainly transform. If Saturn in the chart, because Saturn can be, I talk very positively about Saturn. I fucking love Saturn. No secret, I do. But, Saturn can be, and I do tend to try to swing it in a more positive direction, because I do think Saturn wants you to break through its limitations and boundaries. I really do. I really, really do. I think it wants you to rise to that challenge. But in saying that, I'm not, I know that it can be limiting. I know that it can be restrictive. I realize this, that it does function this way, that Saturn can function this way. So when transit Pluto fucks your Saturn, the way that if you feel limited or restricted by Saturn in some way, transit Pluto is transforming that. Generally, it transforms it for the good. Generally, I find that the way that the person felt limited before this transit is different than how they do afterwards. What that relationship is like with feeling limited or feeling restricted, it does shift. How would depend on the entire chart, but it does shift. It does kind of shift. Now, maturity also. Saturn is maturity. Saturn is also responsibility. It's where you have responsibility. So transit Pluto might transform one's responsibility. It might mature the person. Doesn't mean that process is easy. It's a difficult one. It is difficult because Saturn is more crystallized, and it doesn't. It's harder to transform, if you will. And Pluto does what it does, and it's going to do it. So, if you have transit Pluto conjunct natal Saturn, try not to fight it. Really, this one especially. I mean, all Pluto transits you want to try not to fight because it makes it worse, but it makes it more difficult. But transit Pluto conjunct natal Saturn, definitely try not to fight it as much as you can, because it will. Because Saturn doesn't want to take shit. Pluto doesn't want to take shit. So you got two planets that don't want to take any shit from one another, and they're it's kind of like a standoff. So, or that's how it feels. So it really is best to not fight it in this particular case. And then you'd want to look at the house cusps that have Capricorn on the cusp. And if you use traditional and modern rulership, I use both. So Saturn is the traditional ruler of Aquarius. You could also look at the house cusp that Aquarius falls on. And those houses will give you an idea of what other areas of life will be impacted by this transit, along with the house that this is actually going on in. Transit Pluto conjunct natal Saturn. Okay, so let's say you've got transit Pluto conjunct natal Uranus. This could change, like, transform the way you change, even. It could transform your own liberation, your own originality, your own weirdness. And if you're, you know, like, and sometimes this is, you know, if you've got somebody who doesn't feel as liberated or as, or like they can be as eccentric or weird, transit Pluto conjunct natal Uranus, it might allow the person to kind of lean into this. You might have somebody who was normally pretty normal that all of a sudden really lets their freak flag fly. You know, it really depends on the whole chart. But this transit can actually feel kind of chaotic. Uranus can be chaotic. I also think Pluto can be chaotic in a different way. Like, Pluto can be chaotic because of all the transformation, because of all everything going on. That can feel like chaos. So this transit can feel chaotic. It really can. It can. It would depend on what house. Jesus. It would depend on what house, what house, you know, transit Pluto conjunct natal Uranus is going on in. And then you'd also want to look at whatever house has Aquarius on the cusp. That house will also be impacted. If you don't use modern rulership, then I guess you're not looking at a house here. But I personally think you're doing yourself a disservice not to at least look or take it into consideration. But yeah, definitely things are going to change. Definitely things are going to change with this transit. Okay, so then let's say you've got I don't need to show that one. Natal Neptune is conjunct transit Pluto. This feels like, I mean, this could, like, there could be transformation with your spirituality. There could even be obsession with your spirituality, with how you're spiritual. Be an obsession with creativity or a compulsiveness to be creative. The way that your creativity is expressed could easily, or your imagination, there could be like a death and rebirth to it. For sure. If Neptune in your chart, because Neptune can be like the Lord of Illusions, some of those might get broken down when transit Pluto is conjunct natal Neptune. There sometimes is something with that, where illusions that you have for whatever reason tend to be transformed and kind of maybe not there anymore. That's not always comfortable, especially if we have become comfortable with illusions for whatever reason. But yeah, it could certainly function that way. And then you'd want to look at the house cusp that has Pisces on it, along with the house that this transit is going on in, to give you another idea as to how this will all play out. Okay, now transit Pluto conjunct Chiron. This feels like this could be traumatic, and like it could also be very healing too. You might have, transit Pluto might be like amplifying or obsessive about healing Chiron, or trying to heal Chiron. That seems very possible. Transforming the healing of Chiron in general seems possible too. It seems like it would be a great time to do any sort of work with Chiron, which is not always the most personally fun work to do. Necessary, but not always the most comfortable or fun. But yeah, it's also possible. It also feels possible at this time that if you've got transit Pluto conjunct natal Chiron, you might be looking at, you could end up with a different, like the wounding, it might get re-wounded That seems possible too. It could at this time. Again, though, I think that would probably be for the purpose of actually learning how to work through it better. Pluto has a purpose. It's just, you know, so does Chiron. And there's no house cusp to look at here because Chiron doesn't actually rule any of the, it's not a planetary ruler of any sign. So, so you would just be looking at the house that transit Pluto conjunct natal Chiron is going on. But yeah, I am going to get going. If you want to follow us on Instagram, you can find us at Let's Fuck With Astrology. I am at Saturn Season Astrology on Instagram. Natalie is at Eternal Astrology on Instagram. If you want to like or subscribe or whatever the fuck people do with videos on YouTube, you can find us by searching for Let's Fuck With Astrology in the YouTube search bar. If you're already watching this on YouTube, you can like and subscribe below. If you do the Reddit thing, come join us on the subreddit Let's Fuck With Astrology. And if you're interested in the star cards, go to letsfuckwithastrology.com/star-cards. Okay, y'all. I'll see y'all later.